Welcome back to another UCL Fantasy video, this time ahead of Matchday 7. The knockout stages are fast approaching, so I'll be briefly recapping how Matchday 6 went because it was such a long time ago. Then moving ahead to my updated draft. I've made several changes to the last few videos. Be sure to check them out as well. And also be sure to tune in for the deadline stream on Tuesday. It'd be great to see you there as well. And if you want to see a video like a best differentials for maybe to upload on the Monday, then be sure to let me know. I'm open to maybe some new ideas and putting out something a bit different in terms of UCL Fantasy, and that would be released on the Monday. In between that, we've got the FPL deadline stream on Saturday and possibly the reaction stream on the Sunday. So plenty of content headed your way. If you end up enjoying this video, then be sure to drop it a like. We're going to try to get this over 300, and we're very close to 18,000 subscribers now, so let's just keep on pushing. Just a few more steps now to reach that goal, and thank you very much to everyone who's already supported the channel. It's very much appreciated. But without further ado, let's get straight into this video. Before I delve into the Matchday 6 review, I want to briefly discuss a new feature they've added to the app as well as the website, and that is in terms of the domestic form. They give you a rating out of 5 stars for each player. In this case, Bellingham has 5 out of 5, and with certain ones, I think pretty much every single player who has a fixture Matchday 7, there will be an option to view details. You click on that and you see an overview of the last 5 matches that player has played. So whether they get a goal, an assist, a yellow card, anything important like that, a red card, it will be taken into account and you will see it here in this overview. And if they do not play, it will say here specifically did not play, and it also gives you the amount of minutes they play in each single match. Just a really good feature they've added to UCL Fantasy. It helps you to keep track of recent form because there are so many leagues and clubs involved as well as players, not to mention that. And if you don't use the UCL website, you could also use SofaScore and just check it manually yourself, or other websites like that like LiveScore. But UCL Fantasy now have it on their own website. I would like FPL maybe to do that at some stage too. It's a good feature, and it also really helps you to stay on top and not be overwhelmed by the amount of options at our disposal. Starting off with the goalkeepers in Matchday 6, it was the most disappointing aspect of my team selection. I was kind of anticipating a benching for Kepa Arrizabalaga in Matchday 6, and it did happen. Something similar happened in recent seasons for Chelsea in the Champions League, so that was no surprise to me there. Kepa is the first choice goalkeeper now, and I don't really see any issues with him going forwards. I'm not too convinced about Chelsea going through against Borussia Dortmund, and even if they were to advance, I would have some concerns about him as well. But he is still one of the best goalkeepers, it looks like, at least in FPL. If he can translate even half of that FPL form, he could make for a very good UCL Fantasy asset at only 4.5 million. But very disappointing that he didn't start in Matchday 6. The other one is Adan, who I brought in Matchday 3, and one of the worst transfers, one of the worst players I've ever had, with a -4. He got that red card in Matchday 3 after 2 successive clean sheets to start the Champions League campaign, and then after that obviously suspended for Matchday 4 and got 3 points in Matchday 5 and just 2 in Matchday 6. So as you can imagine, my goalkeeper choices haven't been particularly great. I think I started the season with Courtois. He did pretty well, but then he got injured. So hoping for a bit more luck now going into the knockout stages in terms of the goalkeepers, but certainly I will not be going for Adan once again, and that decision's already been made for me, with Sporting Lisbon already being eliminated. I was very fortunate in this regard though with Carvajal, because he came off just before Real Madrid conceded to Celtic, so he got the clean sheet and an assist. He was just 1 ball recovery away from getting a ball recovery point, but nonetheless he got a 9-pointer. One of the more lucky parts for me in terms of Matchday 6. Then we've got Di Lorenzo, and very, very unfortunate I think Napoli were against Liverpool at Anfield. They lost 2-0. I think they had a goal disallowed in the first or second half. It was very, very early on in the game, and that was a game-changing decision, and it went against Napoli in that regard. I think the likes of Di Lorenzo, Kvaratskhelia were a bit hard done by in that match. Grimaldo though, another 12-pointer, and as I discussed in recent videos, 32 of his points have come against Maccabi Haifa, so let's see how he does against different opposition. He is the highest scoring defender in the game, but like I said, the majority of his points have come against a very weak opposition. The next one is Joao Cancelo, whilst playing for Man City. Now of course he's going to be for Bayern against Paris Saint-Germain, and we'll be discussing the news about Lionel Messi and of course Kylian Mbappe, because we have so many different injury news now in regards to those key players in that fantastic matchup we have. Then in the midfield, Mohamed Salah, let's not forget, he is the joint top scorer in the Champions League this season with 7 goals. He's been absolutely fantastic. Look at that, 4 double-digit returns in a row. He does face Real Madrid, who are the favourites, and Liverpool have been absolutely shocking, but their Champions League form has still been pretty good. They were able to beat one of the best teams in the world in Napoli, so I would still have maybe a bit of faith in the likes of Salah in UCL Fantasy, not so much in FPL, so I would still generally consider Salah, who's only at 13% ownership as well, let's not forget, and he's one of the highest scoring players in the game. Kvaratskhelia, like I mentioned earlier, was a bit unlucky not to get something at Anfield, but against Frankfurt, I could see Napoli just going past quite easily. I don't think Frankfurt are a bad team. They've got Kolo Muani as well, one of the most informed players in Europe, but Napoli have far too much quality, and you would expect them to score multiple goals, arguably in both legs as well. Let's see how that pans out. I could be completely wrong about that matchup. But let's not forget about one of the key players in the group stages, Kudus, who won't be with us now, unfortunately, in the knockout stages. He was a fantastic asset. He wrapped up a really promising Champions League campaign with a 14-pointer. He also looked really good in the World Cup as well, in games such as the one against Portugal. So it's a shame that he's not here once again. And the final midfielder is Bellingham, who did miss out as well. The same goes for Kepa Arrizabalaga, of course. Both of them will be facing each other now in matchday 6 and 7. And Bellingham is arguably the best midfielder in the game, pound for pound, only 7.5 million. So many different avenues for points, goals, assists, clean sheet points, of course, which is quite minimal, ball recoveries, man of the match awards, and look at that. Bellingham has produced 3 double-digit returns, a 9-pointer, and he hasn't blanked so far this season. Let's see if he can keep that up against the Blues in the knockout stages. And to complete the starting 11, the PSG duo of Lionel Messi, who's an injury out now, heading into that Bayern Munich clash. The same goes for Kylian Mbappe, who is officially ruled out of the first leg. Let's see if he can make it in time for the second leg, which will be very crucial. Messi got that assist against Juventus, whilst Mbappe got a goal, an assist, and a man of the match award, and he has been absolutely fantastic in the Champions League. Just look at those returns. 1 blank, but then 2 9-pointers and 3 double-digit returns for a forward nonetheless. It is harder for these forwards to get these huge hauls compared to midfielders. That doesn't really stop Mbappe though, and he is arguably the best player in the Champions League, not only this season in terms of goals, but also as a fantasy asset with the goals, assists, and the MVPs that he can win very, very regularly. My bench is obviously including Kepa, Zielinski, who was a really poor transfer on my part, Jukla, who kind of tailed off towards the end of the group stages, and Upamecano, and I think he was subbed off quite early on, just before Bayern were able to keep a clean sheet, so that was very frustrating, just around half-time. He was on course for a very good return, but because he got subbed off so early, I had to sub him out from my team during the substitution window. And that's pretty much it for match day 6. That's all we need to say about it. Let me know how you did in the comment section down below. And as you can see from the left hand corner of your screen, I have 486 points overall. My rank is around 10,000 in the world, and I got 79 points with a -4 hit taken into account as well. But let's move into match day 7, my current team selection. There could be further changes before the deadline stream on Tuesday, so be sure to check that out as well. And let's just get straight into it. There are some tough calls to make, some 50-50 decisions, but ultimately over the weekend, I will still be pondering some of these choices, and with more information, I can then make the most informed decision heading into match day 7. I've made 1 goalkeeper change, which includes Kepa Arrizabalaga coming in for Edison, and Kepa's been the best goalkeeper in FPL since Game Week 17, and in terms of points per 90, he's actually the very best goalkeeper over the likes of Nick Pope and David Raya, who have been exceptional in the Premier League as well. The only problem is that Kepa faces Dortmund, and especially in the away fixture, I'm not really expecting anything from Chelsea here, and I would expect Dortmund to score a goal or 2. However, Chelsea have been very solid defensively in recent weeks with 2 clean sheets in a row, and I would back the likes of Kepa to offer really good value for money. I wouldn't go for a double up defensively in Chelsea, but I think 1's enough, and I think Kepa Arrizabalaga is the very best option to cover their defence. The other goalkeeper is Courtois, who's still an injury doubt, and let's see if he's fit in time to play Liverpool. He was, of course, man of the match in the Champions League final last season, stopping the likes of Salah and Mane from scoring, and he was the difference maker in that game. Real Madrid have been fairly decent in La Liga, but they have also had some slip-ups, like losing to Mallorca 1-0, where Courtois wasn't involved. So Madrid haven't been great defensively since the restart. I believe that's only 3 clean sheets in that time period, but with Liverpool's lack of form, I would expect Madrid to go there and even get a result at Anfield, and also do enough to ultimately go through to the quarterfinals. I have also made quite a lot of changes in the backline in particular. I think the midfield is quite stable compared to the latest draft I've made, but in the defence I've gone for Ivan Perisic, and this is definitely not set in stone because Spurs can be very, very iffy and inconsistent, and with the news that Hugo Lloris is going to miss the next 6 to 8 weeks, that could arguably reduce Spurs' chances of clean sheets against AC Milan. But my reasoning behind this is that Perisic has actually been really impressive in the Champions League with 3 assists, and AC Milan have been in absolutely diabolical diabolical form, and Spurs have slowly but surely improved a little bit with successive clean sheets in the Premier League against Fulham and Manchester City. So Ivan Perisic is looking really promising. The other one that I'm keeping an eye on is Pedro Porro, the new signing, who's got a lot of attacking potential. He showed it at Sporting Lisbon, in particular in the Portuguese league though, and this is a completely different kettle of fish, but he also was fairly impressive in the Champions League as well, playing in the same group as Spurs. But Ivan Perisic is the one I've opted for at the moment, and I have gotten rid of the likes of Ake, who could still come in. He's very cheap in UCL Fantasy, but at the moment I am opting for a Spurs defender instead, because I think Leipzig could prove to be a really tough test for Man City, especially from a defensive point of view. Next up is Di Lorenzo, who is arguably one of the best defenders to get in Matchday 7, playing on one of the best teams in the world in Napoli, who have been keeping a lot of clean sheets recently, and he's also got attacking potential. He's even got a Man of the Match award under his belt in the Champions League. So Di Lorenzo against Frankfurt looks really promising. I would expect one clean sheet out of the 2 match days. Then going forwards, I do expect Napoli to go quite far in the competition. I could see Di Lorenzo continuing to do well. He's only at 14% ownership too. So the ownership so far of a lot of these players is quite low. Now, you can't do that for every single pick, because the likes of Haaland, Mbappe, who just continuously score, everyone is going to know about that and pick them up in their teams. But sometimes these players with maybe 20% ownership or less, that will be just about enough to go under the radar and do a really good job for you in terms of boosting you up the ranks. And there will be players that some people in your mini leagues, for example, will not be considering or maybe not go for, and by the time they realize that they need to get them into their team, it's going to be a little bit too late. So I'm surprised that Di Lorenzo isn't owned by more people in the game, but then again, once we get close to the deadline, I would probably expect his ownership to go up to around 20%. Next up is Grimaldo, who still needs quite a lot to prove, because despite being the highest scoring defender in the game, most of his points have come against one opposition in Maccabi Haifa. Apart from that, his returns have been very underwhelming. 5, 4, 3-pointers, nothing too special. But if you check his domestic form, he has been absolutely on fire. At one stage, he had 4 attacking returns in 4 successive matches, and he also got an assist in the recent Portuguese league game. So he's a really good asset. He's got so much attacking potential, and Benfica have quite a lot of injuries at the back, and I wouldn't be too confident of a clean sheet. But then their opponents, Club Brugge, have been in awful form. A lot of draws, some sloppy goals conceded, the likes of Micheli scoring own goals. So I think Grimaldo could actually have a good chance of a clean sheet despite all the problems Benfica have at the back, and also maybe add an attacking return on top of that. Now, one signing in January that has been absolutely fantastic at his new club is Joao Cancelo, with assists in successive matches to kickstart his Bundesliga career. He's been absolutely terrific, and he faces PSG, who could be without Messi and Mbappe. And if that's the case, I will almost certainly go for the Portuguese wingback, because he has been absolutely fantastic in the Champions League over the years. And whilst maybe this season has been a bit underwhelming by his standards, and of course things kind of turned sour at Manchester City, I don't expect that to be a problem at Bayern Munich this season. And despite that kind of tough fixture on paper, I could see Bayern going through, and also maybe even keeping a clean sheet, because PSG can be either really good or really bad. They're a really inconsistent team, and we saw the other day against Marseille that they're definitely beatable, and they've lost 3 games already in 2023. So I would back Bayern Munich actually in that matchup, and Joao Cancelo is a really good option. The only issue I have is that his ownership is so high, and I would like to go a bit different, but sometimes you just have to forget about ownership and go for those that you think will score the most points. Now, the last defender is Matteo Darmian, who has been very impressive in recent Serie A matches, displacing the likes of Dumfries, who has been in terrible form since the World Cup. And the other one to look out for is Di Marco, who is also challenging Gosens on the other side. But I would primarily focus on Darmian. He's been the most nailed. With Di Marco, he's had a few kind of short cameos, 20 minutes or less. But with Darmian, he's starting every single game. As you can see, his domestic form is 5 stars out of 5. He even scored in a recent game against Atalanta, kept a clean sheet against AC Milan in Serie A. And not only that, there was the Supercoppa d'Italia final where Inter Milan beat AC Milan 3-0. So I would go for an Inter Milan defender potentially. And if I had to pick one, it would be Darmian right now, the former Manchester United right back. I think is a really good choice that's going to go under the radar. If we check his ownership again, it's 0%. But I would expect that to maybe creep up to 1 or 2% by the time we get to Tuesday's deadline. He's a really good one to look out for. And what will put people off is the fact that he's only got 9 points so far in the Champions League this season. but they don't actually take into account what's happening recently in Serie A and the domestic cup competitions. So Darmian could be a hidden gem, and he could do a fantastic job for you. One of the best differentials in the backline. Now let's move on to the midfield. Bellingham will not be a differential, but having said that, he's also one of the best players in the game. And despite facing Chelsea, where you might favour them to go for instead of Dortmund, I would still expect Bellingham to do a good job. And actually, I'm backing Dortmund to potentially go through, and especially in that home game to maybe put Chelsea to the sword potentially. So that could be a bit of a dilemma and conflict for me, since I have Kepa Arrizabalaga in my team as well. So I will be weighing things up a little bit by the time we get to Tuesday. But Bellingham is certainly one you don't want to miss out on, and he's one of the very best options in the midfield. Next up is Joao Mario, another one who's a bit underrated. Only 6% ownership, but if you check his returns over the course of the season, 2 successive 10-pointers to wrap up the group stages. He's also in great form in the Portuguese league. He's got assists and goals in his recent games, and I think he'll just continue that in the Champions League against an off-form Club Brugge side. Vinicius Jr., though, he hasn't been too great since the World Cup, but he's slowly but surely started improving. I know he's got 5 out of 5 stars in terms of the domestic form, so to speak, but not many goals in La Liga. He scored one in the recent game, but before that he was struggling to get into some goal scoring form in the league. But he's still a really good option facing Liverpool, who I think he can get the better of in that 1v1 battle with Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's at 34% ownership, so identical to Bellingham. They're quite template picks, but Vinicius has only blanked once this season. He's been so consistent, and I would back him to do the job once again against Liverpool, like he did in the Champions League final last season, scoring the winner. And if I had to pick one Real Madrid attacker, it would certainly be him over the likes of Benzema, who is in form, but he's also an injury doubt heading into that Liverpool fixture. The final midfielder is Leroy Sané, one of the best UCL Fantasy assets of all time, you could argue. In the last few years, he's always up there in terms of midfielders and points scored. He's only at 13% ownership, and whilst his domestic form isn't particularly great, I still would back him to just kick things up, because he just always turns up for the Champions League and something just clicks and he turns into a different beast, really. And he was a great player at Man City, of course. I know some people are a bit frustrated with him because he has so much potential and he hasn't really fulfilled it, but he's still offers such quality in all areas of the pitch, and I think he can get goals, assists, man of the match awards and all of that, despite facing PSG up next, which looks tough on paper. The 2 forwards include Harry Kane, who is my Mbappe/Messi replacement, but I want to give a bit of news in regards to that. So Mbappe is officially ruled out of the first leg, confirmed by PSG themselves, but with Messi it is a bit different. According to L'Equipe, Messi is very likely to miss the first leg against Bayern Munich, but Gaston Nadal, a very reliable Argentinian journalist, has reported that Messi is still trying his absolute best to be available in the first leg against Bayern Munich, and that there is still a chance and he hasn't been officially ruled out. So watch this space. In terms of the best forwards for me, I think Osimhen looks like the very best option right now. He's nailed, he's fully fit. He's also in the form of his life, and he's facing Frankfurt, which is a very appealing fixture. The other one would be Haaland. I think those two are quite nailed on and 2 of the best forward options in the game right now, with Mbappe missing out. Now, if Messi is fit, I would generally consider him. He's got 4 goals and 4 assists in the Champions League this season, and he's been so consistent with Argentina and PSG in the whole calendar year, since 2022, and also throughout the whole season. He's been getting goals and assists pretty much every single game. However, PSG are a bit of a disjointed side with no Mbappe and also facing Bayern Munich. Even if he is fit, I would genuinely consider the likes of Harry Kane and Lautaro Martinez, who's one of the most informed players since the World Cup, where obviously he had a pretty poor campaign, but since then he's been on absolutely fine goal scoring form, scoring against AC Milan in the final and also in the recent Serie A game. He's got 8 goals and 1 assist in his last 10 games, so Lautaro Martinez is someone to definitely consider. He has a mega differential that could boost you up the ranks for sure. The other one is Harry Kane, who's only got 5% ownership as well, facing AC Milan, who've been in awful form. When the fixture first came out, I thought, that's quite evenly matched and maybe AC Milan have the edge due to their European pedigree. But right now, I'd actually back Spurs to go through and for Harry Kane to do a really good job in these 2 games. So I think he's actually a fantastic choice, despite him not being great in the Champions League this season. His overall Champions League record has been very solid, but not in this campaign. I'm expecting him to change that heading into Matchday 7 and 8, because he's been in absolutely terrific form in the Premier League as well. So Harry Kane or Lautaro Martinez, I think, will be my 3rd forward, especially if Messi is ruled out of that game against Bayern Munich. Osimhen, like I said earlier, is in absolutely fantastic goal-scoring form. He hasn't been great in the Champions League because he hasn't featured too much. It's mainly been Raspadori and Giovanni Simeone featuring in the Champions League whilst Osimhen is starting all the Serie A matches. I would expect that to change a little bit now with some really tough games coming up for Napoli in the knockout stages and also a comfortable and commanding lead in Serie A. So I would expect Osimhen, our only 3% ownership, to be a fantastic option. I mean, just look at his domestic form. A brace in his last game, scored as well in the others against Roma and all these other teams. He's been absolutely terrific, Osimhen, and I would highly recommend him. And maybe if there was any team to go for a triple or even quadruple up, because you can go for 4 players from the same team now, it would be Napoli. And Osimhen could be a fine addition to your squad. Now let's look at the bench. I've got the likes of Haaland there, and you might be thinking, why? It's because of the date. So just if you're not aware, you want to put those that are playing later in the match day on your bench. So as you can see, Haaland plays on the 22nd. The same goes for Darmian, whilst Kvaratskhelia and Courtois play on the 21st. So I've ordered my bench in such a way where no one playing on the 14th or 15th of February is going to be on my bench, because ultimately you will miss out on their points. You can make substitutions during the substitution window. If you're unsure about anything, then be sure to check out my How to Play UCL Fantasy guide. It's still applicable today. And you can also change the captaincy. So that will be the next kind of thing I want to cover. I'll also briefly talk about my bench as well. But in terms of the captaincy, I'm looking to go for Harry Kane first on the 14th of February, then going for either João Mario or Bellingham on the 15th of February. And remember, once you change your captain, your original captain points will then not be doubled, and you will lose that ×2 from the captaincy points. Then after the 15th of February, on the 21st, I would probably go for either Osimhen or Kvaratskhelia as my third captain. And finally, if need be, Haaland would be my final choice on the 22nd of February. So a really solid kind of list of captaincy options. Some of them are quite low owned, like João Mario as well. The same goes for Harry Kane. So this is looking very solid too. I've got Courtois on the bench, who is an injury doubt. Let's see if he's going to be fit in time to play Liverpool. And if not, I can move to another goalkeeper, even Edison potentially. But I am quite happy to keep him. And even if he misses out the first leg but will be available for the second leg, I wouldn't actually mind just having him from the get-go, because I think Madrid can go far in the competition, and Courtois has a high ceiling. He's a great penalty stopper, and he also makes a lot of saves and helps Real Madrid to keep those clean sheets. The rest of my bench includes Erling Haaland, who's been fantastic since the World Cup, despite a few blips here and there, and in the big games, especially against Spurs and Man United, he's been very ineffective. But I think once Man City can find that formula in the big games away from home to find Haaland in these crucial spaces, he's just going to get even better. He's got 25 goals in the league already. He's been fantastic in the Champions League when he's been available, and he is still one of the very best strikers and goal scorers. I won't discuss him too much. We've done that plenty in FPL and also my recent latest draft video for UCL Fantasy. The last player I really need to cover is Kvaratskhelia, who is actually under consideration for the captaincy on the 21st of February. It will be between him and Osimhen. I'm really backing Napoli to score 2 or 3 goals potentially, even away from home against Frankfurt. And then not to mention that home game against Frankfurt, where you would argue these options have a really high ceiling as well. We've covered Darmian already. There's a really solid 15-man squad in my opinion, even better than the other drafts I've shown you, but there could still be some further changes. The likes of Nathan Ake could come into the defence, maybe Edison in for Courtois or another goalkeeper, not to mention Lautaro Martinez or Messi in for someone like Harry Kane. And then there's also De Bruyne and Riyad Mahrez in the midfield. Not to mention Mohamed Salah, who's been fantastic in the Champions League this season. So there are so many options. You can't cover everyone. Let me know who you're going for down in the comment section below. What are your captaincy plans and what are your contingency plans, especially for those of you like me who don't have the limitless or the wild card in your back pocket. So it's going to be very important to pick players that you think can go far in the competition to minimize the amount of transfers you need to make and also minimize the number of hits. But thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes. Let's also push on towards 20,000 subscribers. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and you can also become a patron or a channel member, patreon.com/DylanRCM, and you can also check the links in the description below for the Discord server and the UCL Fantasy League. So all of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for UCL Fantasy. Good luck. I'll see you on Tuesday for the deadline stream. So I'll see you very soon.